A very warm and pleasant evening once again to all our respected participants, esteemed faculty, researchers, colleagues, students, and friends who have joined us for day 5 of the 1 week International Faculty Development Program on Curriculum Development, Research, and Publication Ethics, organized by the Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram campus, Chennai. Another significant domain we are hoping to learn about more as part of this program is curriculum development. Curriculum plays an important role in creating the base of education. Hence, a professional training in how to develop curriculum can be effective to learn this process. It gives faculty the opportunity to develop their own style of teaching consciously to make learning much more effective and valuable for the individual teacher. To offer valuable insights into this today, we have with us Ms. Afroza Akhter Tina, Senior Lecturer, Department of English, Daffodil International University, Dhaka, Bangladesh, who will deliberate on curriculum development and language teaching. As usual, there will be an interaction with the participants in the live chat stream towards the end of the session. And I request the respected participants attending to kindly reserve your queries for the Q&A session at the end of the presentation and stay with us till the end to access the feedback. I would now like to request Dr. Rama, Professor and Head Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Walter. Good evening and hearty welcome to day 5 of the 1 week International Faculty Development Program on Curriculum Development, Research and Publication Ethics. 4 fruitful days, 4 very useful sessions and a very receptive audience. Thanks to the honorable resource persons and the lovely and enthusiastic participants. On behalf of the Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram campus, I feel very happy to welcome today's guest speaker, Ms. Afroza Akhter Tina, Senior Lecturer, Department of English, Daffodil International University, Bangladesh. With a lot of academic and research credentials to herself, Ms. Afroza has been kind enough to accept our invitation and deliberate on the topic, curriculum development in language teaching. For academicians, this is a very vital aspect. It is done with a view to make learning and education more wholesome and useful for the teachers and the taught. So I must thank our resource person immensely and welcome her most heartily to today's session. Thank you so much, Ms. Afroza, and hearty welcome. To present the resource person to the gathering, I invite my colleague, Dr. Savitha.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. I feel immense pleasure to introduce Ms. Afroza Akhter Tina, working as Senior Lecturer in the Department of English at Daffodil International University. In addition to that, she also holds the position as the member of Examination Committee, FHSS and Assistant Proctor, Main Campus, Daffodil International University, Organizing Secretary of TESOL Association of Bangladesh, Senior Director in the International Teachers Association of Education for Bangladesh, National Community Member of Global Education Network, Certified Advanced TESOL Practitioner and E-Teacher Alumni, U.S. Department of State, Dhaka. She is a recipient of the Best Performing Faculty Member of the Department of English, Daffodil International University for 2020-21. She received International Teacher Development Institute Professional Development Scholarship for Dogme ELT with Scott Thornby, Mevlana Scholarship to teach at Bülent Easwit University, Turkey, e-teacher course on Introduction to Pedagogy and Practices for Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages by US Department of State, Office of English Language Programs, University of Oregon, College of Arts and Sciences, and American English Institute. Her research interests include assessment, English language teaching, sociolinguistics, second language acquisition, post-colonial literature, and American literature. She has completed several certificate courses in ELT and has participated in seminars, workshops, conferences organized by various institutions across the world. She has also presented more than 30 papers in the national and international conferences, published articles in journals, and conference proceedings. Ms. Afroza, Global Professional Member of TESOL International, Life Member of TESOL Society of Bangladesh, Life Member of Bangladesh English Language Teachers Association, and a member of various communities and educational forums. Her accomplishments are so numerous and it is impossible to list them all. It is such an honor for us to have you today among us. Thank you so much for joining us, and I request Ms. Afroza to take over the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Savitha. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. At the very beginning, I would like to thank the Department of English and Foreign Languages of SRM Institute of Science and Technology for sharing this wonderful platform with me. Really, I'm very honored to be a part of this session today. I'm very glad actually to share my ideas, my experiences with you all today. Now, I believe my screen is visible. Am I right? Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. So as you can see that today my topic is actually curriculum development. Now, why did I select this topic? The very first thing that I would like to share over here is that, well, this is one of the prime concerns these days, because now we are thinking of redesigning, revising our curriculum, the entire syllabus. And what is the main focus when we think of, redesigning or revising our curriculum and syllabus these days? Well, we'll talk about that later. And here in my presentation, the main focus would be on the points that need to be considered now. Well, I believe if we are teachers, we all are aware of the term curriculum. We know that even difference between a curriculum and syllabus. But whenever we think of curriculum, well, we can't ignore David Noonan, and who clearly stated that it's about general statements regarding language learning, learning purpose and experience, and a relationship between teachers and learners. So these are some points which definitely we need to consider while thinking of a curriculum now. Now, as we have understood that, well, this curriculum includes materials, teaching styles, methods, assessment, should have specific learning purposes, experiences, and also it should reflect the relationship between teachers and students. Well, when we think of syllabus, actually, on the other hand, it actually functions to interpret what it is intended by a curriculum and how actually we are going to apply all these in the classroom. So application is the main focus in syllabus, but the rest of the things actually are in the broader perspectives when we think of curriculum. Now, Tyler stated 4 fundamental questions which should be answered in developing any curriculum and plan of instruction. So 4 basic questions, 4 fundamental questions, according to Tyler. And what are these 4 questions? The first is, what educational purposes should the school seek to attain? So what are the purposes? So there should be clear and specific purposes when we think of, developing a curriculum. And the second question is about what educational experiences can be provided. So what type of things, materials, and lots of other things, what should be provided to attain these purposes? And number 3, how? The question is, how actually can these educational experiences be effectively organized? So how actually? So the last question in relation to this addresses how we can determine whether the purposes are being attained or not. So we need to ask this. So what would be the kind of specific assessment? How, would we try to assess our learners, or what would be the focus in terms of assessing our learners at the end of the lesson or at the end of the semester? So yes, these are 4 questions according to Tyler, which should be answered in developing any curriculum. Now, specifically when we think of a language curriculum, then the focus should be on the 4 points: designing, revising, implementation, and evaluation. I repeat, designing, revising, implementation, and evaluation. So these 4 could be the prime focuses when we think of a language curriculum. Now, what do we mean actually by designing, revising, implementation, and evaluation? Well, before actually getting into the details of those points, well, let us think about the blended learning. And why blended learning? That's because we are in the new normal at this moment, and we are thinking of the new normal even when we think of the post-COVID era, because things have changed since 2020. We are not in the physical classrooms at this moment. We are not meeting our learners physically. So they are not in the classroom in front of us physically, but they are definitely with us. They are online. We actually are online. We are not looking at each other every time, but still we are trying to connect with our learners. How? Well, that's a crucial question. But here, the main focus is on blended learning. Blended learning. And with this concept, definitely, I believe that the combination of both synchronous and asynchronous platforms are significant over here. So a combination of both the synchronous and asynchronous platforms is important. And here, actually, with the term synchronous platforms, we mean Zoom, Moodle, Meet, lots of other platforms through which we conduct lessons, through which we conduct classes. And obviously, asynchronous platforms also have a lot of ideas, which may start with Canvas, Blackboard, and lots of other things. Well, the points that need to be considered here when we think of blended learning, and in relation to that, revising or redesigning the curriculum, then the first point which needs to be considered is designing based on specific and clear learning objectives. Specific and clear learning objectives. And for workshops or seminars, well, we may also share pre-readings and the entire framework or the outline with the learners before the session, so that we can give them that ownership, for that specific type of interaction. So we need to be sure to share outcomes after the workshop or seminar to reinforce the value of the small group discussions, which is very, very important. And the next point is about promoting inclusivity. So this is also important, because, well, even in developed country like ours, we have few remote areas where we don't expect stable internet connection every time, because the learners who reside over there, sometimes they have that complaint that, ma'am, well, the internet connection is not stable whenever it's a rainy day, specifically when we have storms or thunderstorms. Maybe in that situation we even can't expect that a learner actually is trying to connect with us online. So here the focus should be on enough opportunities and time, a kind of flexibility. A flexible workplace is also important when we think of revising our curriculum at this moment. And the next point is about imparting clear rules of interaction. Now, this is very, very important as well, because we need to restate our expectations. And how can we do that? Well, obviously, there are a lot of ways. For example, we can send an email to the learners mentioning the specific objectives and outcomes of the course. And of course, we can also mention about the attendance, whether attendance has any specific scores or to be added or not. And then definitely we need to clarify the session, whether the session will be recorded or not, whether that will be shared with the learners or not, or how actually will that specific recording be used in future. And apart from that, there are some other points like, basics, how to be respectful in an online course, like maintaining dress code, how to ask questions, and when and why to use the mute function. So yes, there are a lot of things which should be cleared, which should be shared with the learners. So that is also important. Well, whenever we think of the curriculum, which is a huge thing, which has a broad perspective, of course, then we need to include actually all these things as well. And the next point is about setting the stage for successful interaction. So how we have that plan, how we can, set that stage for this successful interaction. Well, teaching online can make interpersonal interactions seem cold sometimes. And as teachers, as educators, I believe, well, most of us feel the same in some way or the other. Sometimes we feel that it becomes difficult, to make that interpersonal interaction effectively every time. And eye contact is also very important. Those who are teachers over here, we understand that this eye contact is very important. Now, what we can do, gazing directly at the webcam and using guidance on how body language translates in video job interviews might be helpful in this regard. Now, apart from that, having appropriate lighting can be the difference between your learners seeing you or your shadow. So yes, appropriate lighting, visual effects and visibility, my online appearance, well, all these definitely can be used for successful interaction. And yes, audio is very, very crucial as well in this regard. Why? For transmitting learnings, specifically when we think of online courses. So audio is very, very important. We can secure external microphone as well and be sure to slow down the pace of the intervention. So that is also important. So the connection over here is very important. And we should be conscious that some of the learners may be hard of hearing. We can't expect from all the learners the same. For example, we can't expect that all of them actually are listening to us simultaneously at the same pace. It's not possible. So yes, if online class platform doesn't generate captions, we can save the videos. I mean, to where? To several platforms. For example, to private YouTube channels. I believe as English teachers, we have private YouTube channels. Most of us have that. And we can generate, free automatic captions over there. So this is how we can also engage them. And yes, making liberal use of the mute function to reduce background noise or the dreaded echo chamber, and reminding learners to do the same. So what I will be doing could be a very good reflection or an example, actually set of example in front of my learners, so we can also expect the same from them then. And the next point is about using peer interaction to foster this community. And yes, whenever we think of curriculum development, this is something which should be addressed, now. Now, when we think of peer interaction, we definitely understand that learning should not be passive. It shouldn't be passive. And obviously, we also can't say that it ends with the class. Of course, as teacher, I can't say that as my class is end, now, well, there won't be any kind of learning at all. So detailed designing and plans for human interaction, for the interaction outside the class is also important. So I repeat, designing and planning for both inside and outside the class is important. Why? To reinforce this learning and foster idea exchanges and debate. And here actually peer-to-peer learning could be very, very beneficial for the students. Peer-to-peer learning, the concept, the review concept. And here in relation to this, I would like to mention my university blended learning platform, which is Moodle. Well, I must say that Moodle, which has been used as the blended learning platform in my university, has various ways to foster to reinforce learning and foster debate, specifically when I think of the forum discussion. Moodle has forum. If I don't know whether the teachers over here are familiar with Moodle or not, but if you are familiar, I believe you have the idea that Moodle has forum and we can utilize the forum the way we want. I have been using forum and have been utilizing it the way I wanted. And how actually I'm using that? Well, I have been using forum for peer-to-peer learning. And I must say that this has been very, very beneficial for the students. My students not only write on the forum, my students not only share their learnings, not only share their problems or confusion through the forum, but also they give each other feedback. They try to answer each other's queries, and they also look up to me for further suggestions. So, well, this is how we can foster idea exchanges. And that is the importance of including this, peer interaction when we think of redesigning and revising curriculum these days. And the next point is about deploying both asynchronous and asynchronous communication tools, of course. Now, asynchronous communication tools, in short, AC tools, are online chat channels, Blackboard, Jamboard, discussion groups, and yes, lots of other things. Now, how we can use these asynchronous tools? Well, obviously, they could be effective in building a specific learning community. Well, obviously, they could be effective when we think of building a specific learning community. I believe as teachers, we try to build actually a specific learning community within the specific course or within some specific guidelines. So we have these specific learning communities in the universities, in our schools, in our institutions. And why actually do we try to do that? We try to engage our learners and increase the collaboration. So for this engagement, learner engagement, and this collaborative learning through discussion, peer feedback, peer support, definitely we need to think of deploying asynchronous communication tools with these synchronous tools. like Google Meet or Zoom, through which we try to connect our learners every day in the class. So here with this point, I wanted to mention that, well, learning actually is not a concept which we can, only well, focus in the class. But we can't say that in the class we are learning something, but after the class we are not learning anything. Well, maybe we can say that before this COVID or before this pandemic, we used to give our students homework. So the idea or the concept of giving students homework is not new. Yes, of course, it's not new. But the thing is how we expect students to come up with their homeworks or ideas now in this new normal when the situation has changed. Maybe will you can say that after the COVID, well, there would be a new normal, or we will be actually back. We will be back physically in the classrooms, and things will be entirely changed. Everything will be like before 2020. But well, I am afraid that things will be like 2019. I mean, before 2020, the way we used to look at things before 2020, because everything has changed, and well, it will be changing. It will be a continuous process. So here, of course, a combination of both synchronous and asynchronous tools is very, very significant and important. And finally, the last point is about assessment. And I have mentioned the point rethinking assessment because, like the way I have mentioned, that things have changed, and we can't expect the same kind of responses from the students which we used to expect from our students when we were in the physical classrooms. So yes, now in online courses where you can control and observe in your course is limited. So we need to push our students, push the universities, and we need to adopt various types of responses and ideas. And here these days we are not only focusing on summative and formative assessments, rather we are thinking of different types of alternative assessments. So yes, I would like to repeat the idea. Alternative assessment is something which needs to be focused at this moment. Well, personally, I'd like to share that as a teacher, I have, I have been assessing my students through various ways. And I must say that using different alternative assessment tools have been very, very successful when I think of, assessing my everyday lesson. So this is how we are changing our point of views. And my specialization or my area of interest actually is on this alternative assessment these days. And I'm working thoroughly on this. I have joined several projects which is working, with this alternative assessment ideas. Very recently, I have been associated with a new project which is climbed by TESOL Career Path Development, an associate of TESOL International, where I'm also working on this. So yes, through various experiences, I have come up with the idea that, well, we need to rethink about the assessment process because, embracing the opportunity to revisit is important. How I'm going to assess my learners at the end of the lesson. And for this, I need to have some specific and clear objectives before the lesson while designing the curriculum syllabus so that, I actually can evaluate my learners the way I want. And they also should have the clear idea about that. Well, at the end, I would like to focus on only one point that yes, syllabus doesn't only focus on one specific type. Rather, they are a combination of a lot of things, and it depends with the need of the language teaching and learning, of course. And in relation to this, curriculum also needs to be developed. But this development obviously doesn't mean that we'll have to, change it in every 5 years or 6 years or something like that. It doesn't mean that we need to change it very often, but definitely it has to be revised and renewed. Why? To make it suitable with the students' needs and future challenges. So that was all from my part. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure we had a lot to take away from that, because in the new normal, as you said, everything has to be rethought, whether it is teaching methodology or whether it is assessment or evaluation. And of course, we have done that. We have in our own individual subjects, I can say, we have redesigned our syllabus to fit into the new normal, where everything has become online, and the students, we are unable to meet the students in person. We will take a few questions, ma'am, now.
Yes, I can also see a question of Dr. Deepa. Probably.
If you can see it, you can go ahead, ma'am. You can go ahead and answer it.
Yes, I can see a very important question. And yes, this is indeed a very important question, Dr. Deepa. Thank you so much for asking the question. It's about sharing few ideas, how we can assess these students. Yes, of course, that's a very important question. Now, Dr. Deepa, I would like to mention once again the idea of alternative assessment. As I have mentioned that I have completed, 2 courses on this alternative assessment, and I suddenly had, so many interesting ideas to assess my learner every day. Actually, not assessing learners every day. The thing is how the lesson went on. Because, the university has some common questions to assess, our classes every day. But apart from that, as a teacher, I also need to know whether the lesson was effective or not. And it's very, very important now to assess the lesson, not the learners, but to assess the lesson, to assess the design at the end of the class. So here, I would like to suggest some very important tools of alternative assessments, like, reflection journals, or portfolios, or, using assessment cards, and also using I can statements in the classroom. I believe, Dr. Deepa, you may say that most of the ideas, maybe you can say, are not familiar or are new to you, but I must say that using assessment cards, customized assessment cards, using I can statements, which is also an interesting tool, and using reflection journals, all these have been very, very effective in my class in terms of assessing the lesson, believe me. Well, in some day, I expect actually to share different types of alternative assessment tools with you, of course. But for the time being, if you want, I may share some very, very exclusive and important articles with you, which have the focuses on, this assessment card, I can statement, reflection journals, how to use them, and how we can be benefited as teachers as well. Because we also need to revise the lesson, we also need to develop ourselves, our teaching. So yes, that is why that's important.
Thank you, ma'am. Another significant query by Professor Ankita Das. Before I go to the question, I would also like to add to that, because we have been finding it difficult in the online mode to conduct practical evaluations and examinations, whether it is a language subject or whether it is a science subject. we are forced to learn about virtual labs. So how could we reconstitute or redesign? That is what the question is with regard to practicals. I'll just post up the question on your screen so you can see it, ma'am.
Yes, wonderful question. How to reconstitute or redesign the practicals in practical-based subjects. Well, personally, as I am an English teacher, I can say that I also, have used to have practical classes with my students, because I also teach listening skills. And as you know, that listening skills is something which needs lab. So it's not that only, science teachers go to lab for, experiments or something like that. As an English teacher, I have to go to lab with my students earlier, before 2020. Now, what do I do actually with my students when we don't have lab, when we can't access lab? So that's a very important question. Now, that is where I have tried to redesign, rethink of the assessment. And how did I do that? Well, I can talk about the listening skill assessment strategies. Well, here, I tried to, I tried to focus on reflection journals. I also got another question from the chat box about reflection journals. How, one of the participants also wanted to, have explanation, wanted to receive some ideas about that as well. Yes, so in relation to this question, I would like to share that through reflection journals, my students have been sharing their ideas, how they are learning, how they are trying to listen, how they are trying to get the information, what are the problems that they are facing, what are the advantages when we think of online listening assessments. So before actually assessing them, we need to collect their feedback, their ideas. We can't ignore the fact that they are the students, they are the learners, and we are going to assess them. So the design, the entire revision should keep them in focus. Yeah. So they should be the focus regarding the entire assessment. So we need to collect their feedback, their ideas, how they would like to assess themselves. Now, believe me, whenever we, ask students this question, whether you are listening, whether you are listening appropriately or not, how actually you are getting information, what about this specific information, is there any problem with the accent, are you facing any problem with the pronunciation, with some specific sounds? So believe me, students will come up with their answers on their own. They would directly share that, yes, we are facing problems with this and that, with this and that. Now, in listening classes, I have that opportunity, to structure the question the way I want. Earlier, my students, when we think of physical classroom, my students, used to go into the labs. They had their earphones, and they listened to a specific comprehension or a specific idea, and then they used to answer 10 or 20, 30 or 40 questions. So this is how they attempted the exam before the COVID, before the pandemic. But now they are listening to something, they are trying to share their ideas, sometimes orally, sometimes they're summarizing their ideas. This is how I'm getting the information from them. So no way there is the possibility that they are, even copying answers from their friends or copying answers from Google. There isn't any possibilities of that, believe me. So they're summarizing the idea. This is how we need to rethink, actually, redesign the assessment. Well, we can give our students a specific, listening recording or something like that. And then we may directly ask our students, what did you actually get from the listening? What did you get from the recording? How would you like to summarize the idea? What would be your point of view when you think of yourself in that specific situation? So there are thousands of questions that we can ask our students. So and in relation to that, one of the participants wanted to know about the reflection journals. Let me answer that now
Yes,
with
ma'am.
this specific question. Yes, Well, yes, reflection journal is something very, very important. And through this, yes, uh, well, definitely we can measure our students understanding their learning. How? Because we can design the journal the way we want. For example, in my reflection journal, the journal that I have shared with the fresher who have just entered into the university, I mean the first semester students, for the first semester students, I have designed a reflection journal which only has, 3 questions, only 3 questions. And what are these 3 questions? The first question is about their learning. What specifically, what 2 specific things probably did they learn from the specific lesson? Something like that, 2 things or 3 things that they try to learn actually during the lesson. And the second question focuses on what is the thing that they want to learn more, or they would want the teacher to explore more in future or in the next class. And the third question is about my teaching strategy. Was that effective or not? Or do I need to redesign or rethink about my strategy, whether I could reach my students or not? So this is how, I designed my reflection journal. I gave them that at the beginning of this semester. I discussed everything with them. They have been trying to maintain that reflection journal since then, since May. And now if I give you an example, if I show you one of the samples, you would be amazed to see how the fresher who have just entered into the university, how they are measuring their own learning. So it's not about my assessing the learners, it's about their reflections as well, how they are measuring their performances. So yes, that's important. And I also can see a lot of other questions. For example,
Ma'am, there is a question on your screen now, by
yes,
one of the participants.
yes, that's an important question. Well, how is more effective between asynchronized and synchronized learning for our students? Well, a very important question. Thank you for asking the question. Well, for example, in my university, we conduct classes through Google Meet. This is the platform through which we conduct classes in the university. And apart from this platform, we have Moodle as the blended learning platform. So Moodle is such a wonderful which has well lot of tools, lot of ways not only to assess learners but also to engage them. And there are a lot of options to embed third party apps as well. I don't know whether you are aware of third party apps or not, but yes, there are a lot of options to include third party apps as well. For example, I can embed Padlet, I can embed even reflection journals, wonderfully. So whenever a student click on Moodle, for example, he or she can see that, well, I'll have to do all these, I'll have to maintain all these throughout this coursework. So each and everything is in front of the student, and they are coming in the classes with all those things. They receive all the things at the beginning of this semester. That's important. We need to give them the clear objectives. We need to give them the clear course outline, the complete course outline, assessment strategy, and lots of other things before the classes at the beginning of the semester, so that they have everything in front of them. And after that, when they come into the class, well, it becomes very, very easy, very, very easy for the teacher to connect with the students. And the students also are engaged exclusively because they can understand that, well, I have all the things ready over there in Moodle. So this is how we can, combine both synchronous and asynchronous tools. And Moodle, is an updated platform. I don't know whether it's updated in each of the institutions or not, but in my university, we have, a specific IT department, IT team, who's working very hard with Moodle. every day. And well, our model is actually an updated version, a very, very updated version. Actually it's updating every day. The team is updating it every day. So whenever we click model every day, we find something new over there. New, I mean, in the sense, a new tool, or a new option to assess our students. So yes, of course, it's so interesting. So this is how we need to combine all these, I mean, synchronous and asynchronous platforms. And this is how we can make the teaching learning effective. And also I can see another question from Sureka Chattopadhyay.
Yes, go ahead.
It's about, yes, how to assess students in group discussion in the virtual mode. Oh, that's wonderful. Sureka, well, I would love to share my model course someday with all of you. Maybe, I don't know whether I would get that opportunity or not, but someday I would like to share my course with you so that you can see how I am assessing my students through group discussion. I have, I have definitely groups in my course, in all my courses, and students are communicating with each other through group discussion. For example, one group actually is trying to not only give feedback to the other group members, but also each group is trying to receive feedback as well, both from the peers and from the teachers. And they are, coming up with the revised drafts, and they are gradually revising their drafts this way. So it's not about that today we have discussed about, for example, diglossia, and the chapter is closed. For example, if you say that today I took a class on diglossia, and then the students participated, on the forum discussion in groups, and then the chapter is closed. Well, it's not like that. After discussing on forum, we may definitely, request the students to give each other feedback, to come up with constructive feedback and ideas, and yes, of course, to revise the drafts if needed, according to the suggestions or ideas that they receive or will be receiving. Now, for all these, what is needed, Surekha and the others? Well, the thing is, we need to give them proper and clear instructions. I repeat, clear instructions is important. Whatever we do with our students, we need to give them clear instructions. This is how we can make it effective, meaningful. Other than that, it won't be meaningful and effective, of course. And yes, I believe there are also questions from Kamala.
There is one on your screen, ma'am.
Okay, yes, I can see that question. There's always a problem since you're not sure if everyone is following. Yes, of course, in large classes. We have this problem with large classes. So how do you ensure everyone's participation? Well, it depends. Let me tell you, Malika, very wonderful question. It depends how we would like to assess. For example, let me share one interesting strategy with you. Through assessment card, which is a wonderful idea, assessment card. I don't know whether you have heard about this assessment card before this or not, but assessment card is something very interesting. And as teacher, we can customize the card the way we want. The idea came from a Japanese teacher, and his name is Lovelock. Lovelock came up with this idea of assessment card, and he was teaching probably Japanese in the classroom. Well, the idea is that the card will have two sides. Each card has two sides, and in each of these sides, there will be some questions, some points in both these sides. For example, the number of classes. In my university, in every semester, we usually take 23 to 24 classes. So there will be the number of classes from 1 to 24. And also there will be some instructions, how they will fill up that specific card. And after that, there will be some strategies which the students will have to fill up on their own. In a large class, it's difficult, to get each and every student's responses, to collect each and every student's responses and give them feedback individually. It's not possible when we think of a class which has more than 40 or 50 students. It's quite impossible. But the thing which we can do is we can make our students do the task on their own. Students actually may do everything on their own. They can fill up the assessment card, which may have different types of strategies. For example, whether they have used English while communicating with each other in the class during the lesson. This could be one point. There could be a lot of other things, probably whether I ask a question at the end of the lesson or not. Maybe students may say whether I try to answer to my friend's queries or not, or I try to answer to my friends, I try to clarify my friend's confusion or not. So there are a lot of things which can be included in the assessment card, and we can request the students, advise the students to fill up the cards on their own, so that they can also see whether in each of the classes they have tried to, uh, complete all the assigned tasks, or they have tried to, come up with all the interesting strategies, or they have tried to fulfill all these strategies, or all the, possible ways through which the teacher wanted them, to measure their own understanding or learning. So yes, students can do a lot of things, but for that, we need to ensure whether we understand everything clearly, and we are actually making the students understand clearly everything or not. So there should be clear instructions regarding each of the tools or strategies. And yes, with large classes, using assessment cards could be very, very beneficial. I may share the interesting article with you. Probably I may share this article with the authority, Dr. Savitha or Dr. Rema, or with the coordinator, and they can share all these articles with you later.
Yes, sure, ma'am.
And I also can see another question from Kamala Kannan. He wrote, he asked, how can we have practical sessions for these students? Yes, I think this has been tried to, to be answered. And any other questions? It's about
Ma'am, there is one here.
Okay, wonderful. Yes. Recorded lectures with fewer infrastructure facilities. Oh, that's yes, crucial question, Anjal. Thank you so much for the question. Now, I don't know what did you actually mean with few infrastructure facilities, but I believe when we, record a lecture, well, personally, I believe we need to share that with our students. Other than that, why did we, record that lecture? Why are we recording a lecture if it's of no use? Well, if we are recording the class, then we'll have to share that with the student. I don't know about you, but personally, I think that it can be easily shared through Messenger group and also through Moodle. Personally, I share my class recording through two ways: through our specific Messenger group and also through BLC. BLC means Moodle, the platform that we use, along with Google Meet Classroom. So if we can use actually, or can share the recordings, definitely the students would follow that. We can, compel our students listen to the recording whenever they have questions. I mean, whenever they have common questions, which we can, which we can say that have been answered in the class. So whenever a student asks a very common question, which has been answered in the class already, we can directly guide that student to listen to the recording. We can directly request him or her to listen to the recording, then discuss with the friends, and then come up to me with some more questions or further questions or any kind of confusion if have. I personally do that every time. And believe me, last year, in 2020, I supposed to receive a lot of questions from my students every day. Believe me, I'm actually sharing my personal experiences with you at this moment. in 2020, when I think of, April, May, June, in that semester, I was, constantly receiving questions from my students uh, during the class, after the class, even on my off days. A lot of questions from my students. And, I was just thinking, how can I get rid of all these questions? Because I have answered all these questions in the classes, but still, even after that, they're asking the questions because they were so worried, they were worried regarding so many things. And now what to do? As a teacher, I have to help them. And I also can't answer to their queries every time. It's not also possible for me to be, online every time. So what can I do? Suddenly I had that idea that I can, guide them through two different ways, through different stages. The first stage is whenever my student asks a question, the very first thing that they're supposed to do is to listen to the class recording very carefully. And the second stage is they'll have to discuss with their friends, batchmates, peers regarding their confusion or questions. And the third stage is they will come up with further questions if they have any after discussing with friends and listening to the recording in the next class. They will note down the question and then they will ask me the question in the class. So asking questions in the class and listening to the recording before that and consulting with friends actually have been very, very effective, believe me.
Ma'am, there were around 2-3 participants who asked this next question. It is about reaching students who are living in rural areas. So we have been facing a lot of issues. I'm sure teachers across the globe have been facing this problem of reaching students in rural areas. So what measures would you suggest to improve on the teaching learning process in this case, where there is always poor connectivity or a lot of network issues with regard to internet connection and other technical areas. So your thoughts
Yes.
on this, ma'am?
Yes, and that is the point which I also have mentioned in my presentation today, that we need to think of them because even in a developed country like ours, we also have, some remote places where there is not stable internet connection every time. And we also can't expect this from our students every time. Personally, I can say that I'm privileged. I have stable internet connection most of the time, but I can't expect the same from all my students because there are remote areas, of course. Now, what we can do for them, I don't know whether you have noticed that point in my presentation or not. I have clearly mentioned this, that there should be opportunities for these students and how we can give them that opportunities. For example, whenever we give them assignment, whenever we give our students assignments, what do we usually do? We usually give them enough time. For example, personally, I give my students at least 1 month to complete the assignment, at least 1 month. And for this, I personally can say that none of my students come up with the idea that, ma'am, I haven't actually submitted the assignment in time. I failed to submit the assignment in time. None of my students actually has mentioned this. Why? Because they had enough time. They had enough time. Now, regarding oral, assessment, regarding written assessment, we also need stable internet connection. Now, this was about assignment for which we can give them 1 month or 20 days or 25 days, the way we want. But what about oral assessment or written assessment? Now, here also I would like to mention one specific point. The very first thing is that we'll have to accept, everyone should accept the idea that yes, we'll have to cope with this new normal. Excuses, now I repeat, excuses should be cut off, these days, because the situation has changed and we'll have to adopt. So this adaptability should be there in the mind every time. Whenever we think of this, that I'll have to be in this situation, maybe who knows, for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then how will I adapt? Should I mention my problem every time whenever I have to attempt a written exam or oral exam? No, of course not. So the idea should be there in the mind. This is the first thing. I was actually doing a presentation yesterday in a very interesting conference in Malaysia, where the speakers also focused on this fact that now it's the time to think of this new normal, and we'll have to shift our ideas. We'll have to think of the new and changed situation. Other than it will be difficult for us, because we'll complain every time. So that should be reduced through what? Through definitely adaptabilities. And how can we adapt practically? That was about the idea which should be in the mind. But apart from that, well, whenever a student has problems regarding network issues or internet, then what they can do. For example, in my university, we take written examinations. Every semester we take written examinations. We also take Viva. We also take Viva along with the written examination. We also give them assignments to complete. Now, when we assess them through written uh, responses, and when they write answers in the question directly online through different modal tools, well, we give them enough time. For example, the question, if the question is, but we actually keep the time in our mind, because earlier, before this pandemic, the time actually was 1.5 hours for the midterm and 2 hours for the final examination. But now, during this pandemic, we have extended the time. We give our students 2 hours for the written examination and 3 hours for the final examination, and 2 hours for the midterm examination. And most of the students have enough time to complete and submit their responses. So yes, there should be enough opportunities for students. We need to give them enough time, because other than that, obviously they may say this, that I was unable to submit the responses in time, or I didn't have stable internet connection. And apart from that, keeping extra mobile data is also something that is one of the major concerns in our university. So keeping extra mobile data is something which has the main focus at this moment. That you can, mention about money, and about a lot of other stuffs in relation to that. But yes, of course, we try to motivate the learners this way, that when you were in the classroom, you actually spend probably for your food, for your transportation. But now, as you are online, so you can spend that amount in terms of maintaining extra mobile data every time. So yes, we'll have to adapt, and there should be a balance.
Thank you, ma'am. With that, I think we can come to the end of the Q&A session. I would now like to request HOD, Dr. Rama, to give her kind comments. Ma'am?
Yes, Walter. Walter, I think everyone will agree when I say that she has given us, Ms. Afroza has given us a lot of steps towards effective curriculum development, with a lot of focus on, I think, assessment and feedback. And I'm sure as teachers, all of us will definitely agree with her because these two are very, very important aspects as far as our curriculum development and content development is concerned. But what was, what I felt more thankful towards Miss Afroza was the fact that she's so much ready to share her resources with everyone. So thank you so much, Ms. Afroza, for not only sharing your knowledge, but your readiness to share your resources also with us. So thank you so much for patiently taking the question and answer session and making it so lively. So thank you once again from my side.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful opportunity with me. Thank you so much.
Yes. Shall we move on to the formal vote of thanks, ma'am?
Yes. Yes.
I would now like to request my colleague, Ms. Pritha Basu, Assistant Professor, Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, Pritha.
Yes, thank you, Walter. It gives me immense pleasure to give the vote of thanks today as an end to a wonderfully informative and engaging session organized by Department of English and Other Foreign Languages, SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram, Chennai. At the outset, I would like to thank the Almighty for showering us with grace and blessings for smooth conduct of the program. I would like to thank and place on my record my sincere appreciation to Ms. Afroza Akhter, Senior Lecturer, Department of English, Daffodil International University, Bangladesh, for accepting to conduct today's session as part of the one-week international faculty development program on curriculum development, research and publication ethics for the teaching and research fraternity. She has deliberated this event with her insightful analysis and exemplary knowledge on curriculum development in language teaching in particular. Thank you very much, ma'am. I'm sure your ideas have enlightened our participant to take all the necessary steps to design a contemporary curriculum for the new age learners. And it was a pleasure to have you amongst us. And I also like to thank the entire management of SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram, Chennai, for their constant motivation and guidance. And needless to say that behind all the success of our events is the incredible support of all our colleagues, and especially of our HOD, Dr. Rema, the driving force behind it. And thank you once again, ma'am, for encouraging us to take all these efforts. So you must be congratulated every day for that. And without my organizers duo, Dr. Savitha, Dr. S. Savitha, and Dr. Walter Hugh Parker's tireless efforts, this event wouldn't have been a success. My sincere gratitude for taking the initiative to host this entire program, which is so beneficial for the entire community. And also entire teaching community, and also special mention of my co-coordinator, Dr. K. Nagamani, whose constant support in all our endeavors is remarkable, is least to mention. And last but not the least is I thank all our participants, each and every participant, for their participation and cooperation in making today's event a success. Thank you, all and all.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you,
at the end,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Deepa wanted to requested me to share one sample of reflection journal, and I would share that, Dr. Deepa. Thank you so much. Thank you, all the participants.
Thank you all,
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
We can leave the studio, ma'am.
Okay, Walter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.